ready?
Yep.
Let's go ahead and begin. Okay, thanks. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bellbrook City Council. Today's date is Monday, June 28th, 2021. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Pam, could you call the roll?
Yeah, just a second. Having a technical difficulty here. Ugh. Okay. Mr. Hope.
Here.
Mr. Havens.
Here.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen.
Here.
Mr. Greenwood.
Here.
Mrs. Middlestetter.
Here.
Mayor Schwaller.
Here. We have a motion to excuse Deputy Mayor Edwards from tonight's meeting.
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen made a motion to excuse Mr. Edwards from tonight's city council meeting, and this was seconded by Mr. Greenwood. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. The minutes of our last meeting of June 14th have been distributed to you in tonight's packet. Are there any corrections or adjustments to those minutes?
None here.
None, Mayor.
Seeing none, I declare the minutes approved as submitted. Under mayor's announcements, just a couple of brief comments. First off, for those of you watching the schedule very close, primarily the viewing audience, you'll notice that our Article 14 work session previously scheduled for tonight has been delayed. We're going to allow council a little bit more time to digest the content of Article 14 and reschedule the work session a little bit later on. Of course, it'll be on the minutes as this one was as well. And secondly, with regard to the city manager position, we're aware of her departure on July the 30th. We have posted that job. We received some applications. And tonight during our executive session will be the first time that we actually look at those applications as a council. So we'll move forward on that. And we have high hopes of finding someone equal to the skill set and talent of Melissa to take the city on to the next step. That's all I have for tonight. We have no public hearings. We have no introductions. However, we do have 3 resolutions. Starting with the first one, Resolution 2021-Q. Councilman Van Veldhuizen.
All right, Mayor, I'll give this a shot and making sure I'm not muted so you don't have to all yell at me. So tonight, resolution number 2021-Q, a resolution to proceed to a levy a tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation. The city of Bellbrook, Greene County, Ohio, met in regular session on this 28th day of June, 2021 in Bellbrook City Council chambers with the following members present, and that would be Mayor Schweller, myself, Councilwoman Middlestetter, Councilman Greenwood, Hoke, and Havens. And we moved for adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the amount of taxes which may be raised within the 10 mil limitation will be insufficient to provide an adequate amount for the necessary requirements of said city of Bellbrook, Greene County, Ohio. Now therefore, the city of Bellbrook hereby resolves, Section 1, that with 2/3 of all members elected thereto concerning, that it is necessary to levy a tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation for the benefit of the city of Bellbrook for the purpose of providing current operating expenses of the general fund at a rate not exceeding 1.3 mils for each $1 evaluation, which amounts to 13 cents for each $100 evaluation for a renewal of 1.3 mils to constitute a tax of 1.3 mils for a 5-year period of time commencing in tax year 2022 and first collected in 2023. Section 2, that the question of levying additional taxes be submitted to the electors of said city of Bellbrook at the primary election to be held at the usual voting places within said city of Bellbrook on the second day in November 2021. The ballot shall be in the following form: proposed tax levy, a renewal, city of Bellbrook. A majority affirmative vote is necessary for passage. A renewal of a tax for the benefit of the city of Bellbrook for the purpose of providing current operating expenses of the general fund at a rate not exceeding 1.3 mils for each $1 evaluation, which amounts to 13 cents for each $100 evaluation for a 5-year period of time commencing in tax year 2022, first due in calendar year 2023. The choices are for the tax levy and against the tax levy. Section 3, and that said levy be placed upon the tax list of the current year after the February settlement next succeeding the election, if a majority of the electors voting thereon vote in favor thereof. Section 4, that the clerk of this city of Bellbrook be and is hereby directed to certify a copy of this resolution to the Board of Elections, Greene County, Ohio, immediately after its passage, and notify said Board of Elections to cause notice of election on the question of levying said tax to be given as required by law. Section 5, that this resolution shall take effect and be in force forthwith. And the last line assumes that there is a motion to approve this. And that last line is the council member seconding the motion and then the roll being called upon its adoption, and the vote is counted as follows. So at the bottom, there is a clerk certification, Mayor, where Ms. Timmons would certify that all above is a true and correct copy of the resolution as adopted by us tonight, if we so do that. And I believe that is the end of 2021-Q, which is a very different resolution than we've been reading the past couple of years.
Thank you, Dr. Dave.
You're welcome, sir.
So this is the last piece of legislation in the process to get the general fund renewal levy on the ballot for November. So we do have 3 opportunities in which to place the levy on the ballot, with the first one being November of this year. And then should we be unsuccessful in passage of that levy, we would have another 2 opportunities before it expires. So as the resolution states, it expires, our taxes that we collect will expire in 2022. So this allows that to continue into 2022 for collection in 2023. So that is what we have. We passed one resolution already. We sent it off to the county auditor. They had given us the certification back, and this is the final piece of legislation. So this levy brings in approximately, let's see, it's right around $192,000. I did not have the certification in front of me. However, my internet is down at home, and so I did not realize that we had a line that broke. So this levy does qualify for the rollback in homestead. I know that was asked at the last council meeting. So August 31st of 2013 was when that went away. So any levy that is a new levy or a replacement levy after that date in 2013 would not receive rollbacks and homestead exemption from the state of Ohio. And this particular levy was last replaced in 2007. So the valuations are current as of 2007 for this levy, and rollbacks and homestead exemption do still apply to this. So.
Any questions to council? Go ahead, Ernie.
Yeah, I just wanted to review, you said something about $192,000. What was that number?
That's how much this levy brings in. If I,
Per year?
yes,
So it's a small portion of our overall
yes.
budget.
1.3 mils is a really small levy.
Yeah. And Ernie, it's the only levy we have that's not permanent.
Okay, I just wanted to verify the value and make sure I heard that number right.
Actually, that number was wrong. That must have been one of the older calculations. I have the levy certification in front of me now that we got back from the auditor. 226 will be what this levy will bring in.
Okay, thank you.
Still a small number overall.
That's still a small number, but that was an older figure, so I was able to find the certification real quick. So 226 was what this one will bring in.
Thank you.
Melissa, the last time we had a levy on the ballot, I know it was under City Manager Sloghack, I believe. And I think to provide funding for signage and communications, we had to set up a levy financial committee. I forget how we termed it, what we called it, but we did have a citizen that was in charge of it. I was wondering if you could go through the next couple of weeks and kind of in bullet point form, identify those steps that we have to take or that we have to put together such that we could possibly go out and purchase some signs so we can have those steps ready if we decide to take that path.
Yep, I can do that.
And any other limitations on fundraising. I didn't think there was a lot about it, but I thought we had to have a citizen not involved with the council or employee of the city
Yes.
to be our sort of point person on the financial side of it all.
And I had already started to update the last postcard that was sent out. There was a mailer that went out to all the residents. And I did start updating that. So I just need to I was waiting on the levy certification to be able to put the final figures in, but I did already start to update that and just need to plug in a few things and that'll be ready to go and saved.
Okay. And again, I think we're going to need a push by council in the community to make sure we get this thing through. It's only a renewal. It's not new money. But I think anytime that we ask for money, there's always a lot of pushback, but I'd like to see council be very supportive of it. And again, a renewal, if we lose it, then we'd have to come back and try to get new money later. Any more questions or comments or discussion on resolution 2021-Q?
Mayor, I just heard it say that the recording had stopped. Is that okay?
I'm showing still live on YouTube. I'll leave it to our.
Yeah, I heard it say it recording stopped as well.
I did too.
You just lost two.
Must have a lightning strike.
Yeah, we froze for a minute. Can we hold? Well, I'm also, I have it going on YouTube. There was a little blank spot, so let me make sure. And Dr. Dave fell off. There, he's back. Let's make sure everybody gets back.
I think Elaine lost too.
What's happening?
That's pretty impressive that we lost our internet and our Zoom call is still up.
Yeah. Okay. Also, so I run two, and my one that I control YouTube through is temporarily down. So hold on a second. Let me get back. I know, it's weird. Okay, let's go. Let me get back here. That's my Zoom. Okay, says we're still live on YouTube here, so that's good.
Did the
Right.
whole city take a hit?
I don't know. Yeah, well, Elaine lives close to me and Dr. Dave lives this way, so I'm guessing it's this general area. Just had some kind of blip. So,
Yeah, our power just went
Yeah.
out, but it came back.
yeah, I came back. Do we have everybody back?
Yeah, so the meeting's not over early. That's what you're saying.
No. Okay.
Okay, now that we're back, I think my last comment was, do we have any more discussion or questions regarding resolution 2021-Q?
I think the 10% rollback is important. That's a bargain.
And if we don't renew it, we would run the risk of losing that in new money.
That's right.
I think,
Any other,
are we all back? And I think we're still on YouTube, so I think we're good now. So I apologize.
no problem.
You didn't do
Any
it.
other comments on resolution 2021-Q? Hearing none, can we have a motion, please?
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion, Mayor.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Are you there, Pam?
Is that TJ?
TJ made the second, yes.
All right, a motion was made by Dr. Van Veldhuizen to adopt resolution 2021-Q, a resolution to proceed to levy a tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation. This was seconded by Mr. Hoke. Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes,
Mayor Schweller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Next on the agenda is resolution 2021-R. Councilman Hoke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just need to position some things. 1 second. Yes, off mute. City of Bellbrook Resolution Number 2021-R, a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign an agreement with the Greene County Engineers Office for the collective paving program for 2021. Whereas the city of Bellbrook desires to participate with the Greene County engineer in the competitive bid contract for the collective paving program for 2021 as bid by the Greene County engineer, and whereas the Greene County engineer has included the city of Bellbrook's annual street program in their 2021 collective paving bid, and whereas the bid amount for the city of Bellbrook is $200,186.73 for the following streets: Cedar Court, Glenberry Circle, Kensington Drive, Nob Hill Drive, Northfield Drive, Plantation Trail, Poston Drive, and Sable Ridge Drive. Now, therefore, the city of Bellbrook hereby resolves, Section 1, that the city manager is hereby authorized to sign the attached agreement with the Greene County Engineers Office. Section 2, that this resolution shall take effect and be in force forthwith.
Okay, so this is our annual paving resolution to be able to enter into contract with our with the collective paving program that's through Greene County. And so the decision last year with the additional gas taxes increased our allocation for our paving program from $150,000 to $200,000. when we talked about the capital program, we decided that what we were going to do was take $100,000 from streets and $100,000 from capital, which is funded by the general fund, versus what we did last year, which was $100,000 from capital. And I'm sorry, it was $150,000 from capital and $50,000 from streets. So we are splitting that 50-50 between the two funds. And so the agreement was to keep it at the $200,000 mark. And in doing so, we were able to add Nob Hill Drive onto there. So the figure in the resolution includes a 6% contingency. We did see the bid figures, and the bid figures are a little bit lower than this. So this is a very conservative budget. We don't think that we're going to hit the figure that's in this resolution, but we do have a bit of padding in here, which actually puts us pretty much right at budget. But we don't expect to have to spend that. Last couple of years, I guess, that contingency had not been hit there for a while. That was being built in because it was pretty standard what it was going over bid. But in the last couple of years, that contingency really has not been realized. So hopefully that stays as just a buffer that we really won't have to touch. So even if we do, it still stays on budget. So that's a good thing. So got it as close as possible with the streets that are listed. And Ryan's got a really awesome system with measurements for all of the streets to try to get it as accurately as possible. And they really monitor the trucks, and they make sure that they monitor all the tonnage of asphalt so that they can monitor it very closely to make sure that what we're being charged is right in line with what we need. So, and they also measure the thicknesses of the streets to make sure that they're not putting too much down or putting too little down. So the service department really does a good job of keeping a good eye on this. So the whole process.
So I just had a question about the Sable Ridge line item. It says for segment all dash entrance. You know what that means? Can you explain that?
All of it to the entrance, because it's a super long, cul-de-sac basically.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's a long road. That's a pretty good price.
Yeah. This state competitive bid program on this, so the county competitive bid has really worked out well for us. And our tonnage is so minor in the overall calculation for Greene County that we would probably not get pricing like this on our own. I think we looked at that a couple of years ago, but yeah.
We didn't even get anybody to bid on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Any comments or discussion regarding resolution 2021-R?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think pricing looks very impressive. Yeah.
Very good. I think we have a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Elaine.
A motion was made by Mr. Hoke to adopt resolution 2021-R, a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign an agreement with the Greene County Engineers Office for the collective paving program for 2021. And this was seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Mr. Hoke?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Havens?
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mayor Schwaller?
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Next up tonight is resolution 2021-S. Councilwoman Middlestetter, please. When you're on mute.
Unmute
Yeah.
and back to my text. Okay,
Thanks.
here we go again. City of Bellbrook, resolution number 2021-S. A resolution in support of the Bellbrook to Spring Valley Connector Trail. Whereas Greene County is part of the nation's largest paved trail network, and whereas more than 1 million individuals, both local residents and visitors, Annually utilize Greene County's growing paved trails network, and Greene County's municipalities have extraordinary opportunities with the Ohio to Erie Trail connecting Cincinnati to Cleveland, and the Great American Rail Trail Initiative, a cross-country trail that connects Washington, D.C. to Washington State, traversing our region. And whereas there is a desire to integrate Bellbrook by way of connecting to the Little Miami Scenic Trail in Spring Valley, and whereas the city of Bellbrook recognizes the community benefits associated with the Bellbrook to Spring Valley Connector Trail, which include providing a safe travel route for all ages, abilities, and income levels using all transportation modes, supporting economic development by providing increased access to the downtowns of Bellbrook and Spring Valley to ensure that our communities thrive, promoting active lifestyles, decreasing such issues as obesity and lowering healthcare costs, facilitating access to recreational opportunities through increased access to Sackett-Wright Park and Morris Reserve, reducing automobile traffic and congestion while promoting health, helping various entities deliver on their goals, enhancing mental health, economic opportunity, and quality of life. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves, Section 1, the City of Bellbrook does hereby proclaim its full support of the efforts to construct the Bellbrook to Spring Valley Connector Trail. Section 2, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith.
Thank you, Elaine.
Back to you.
Okay, so there are a few different entities in Greene County that are applying for a RAISE grant, and Sugar Creek is spearheading the grant portion that would fund the Bellbrook to Spring Valley Connector Trail. So this is huge. It's huge. The RAISE grant's very competitive, and Sugar Creek Township is planning to actually put funding towards a match for the grant if it comes to fruition. So this is a resolution that is obviously in support of this, that can be included with the grant application. So as many of you probably remember, the Greene County Master Trails Plan was something that we helped to support, and we added a small financial commitment to that overall plan. And with Bellbrook having quite the biking community that already comes through, given our lack of connectivity to the major trails in the area, it was something that we all felt was very important to support. And that Greene County Master Trails Plan was finalized, and it is available on Greene County's website. But they looked at connections all over the county. They did a huge outreach. They were at our farmers market. People were drawing on maps, and there was overwhelming support and need in the county as a whole for this connection. So this actually ranked a high priority in that Master Trails Plan for something that needed to be constructed. So with this being a highly ranked project identified in the Greene County Master Trails Plan, and with there being so much community support, which this is also lending our voice to for that grant, even though it is very competitive, I'm hopeful that this might actually come to fruition. So this is really exciting, and this is really going to be something to watch. So once this resolution is passed, I will send this over to Brian Hausch, and he is the council president over in Yellow Springs, but he also works for Miami Valley Rails, or he works for the Rails to Trails program. I don't think it's Miami Valley, but Rails to Trails program. And he's a big advocate for these bikeway connections, and he's really kind of organizing the lead on getting this grant submitted. So this is awesome. something else just popped up on me. Okay, so that's what this is. So hopefully everybody is excited about this as I am, and it's definitely something to keep watching. Hopefully it happens.
And
Do you
this
have
is
any-
just for Bellbrook's portion of it, right?
So actually, there's really not anything that would be constructed in Bellbrook necessarily. So this would be on the side of 725. I believe it would be on the north side of 725. And it would ultimately terminate or begin in Bellbrook. But the path really does go right through Sugar Creek Township into Spring Valley. And so there really wouldn't be anything connected necessarily. It would just continue on to our 725 because our section 725 within the boundary, because we don't have any room in the downtown to be able to construct a separate bike lane. One of the things that we've been talking about with the streetscape plan is that we should probably put some sharrows down on the road. So it wouldn't be a dedicated bike lane or anything, but it would just be some markings that are painted on the road that indicate that bicyclists and motorists would be sharing the road. And it's just really to bring awareness of the cycling community. So there wouldn't really be anything constructed in Bellbrook, but it's definitely something that we want to get behind and support the construction of. So whenever you apply for those grants, the more support you can get from the area municipalities and organizations and things like that, the higher you tend to score. So this is just checking another box for hopefully more points for the grant.
Okay, thanks for that explanation.
Melissa, any idea where this pathway would terminate in the vicinity of Bellbrook? Would it be
725.
or Sackett Wright?
No, I mean, it probably would not go any further than Lower Bellbrook because they can't really put anything on that north side because you'd be filling in floodplain and the well field is right there. So it would probably terminate somewhere at Lower Bellbrook right there. And then there would just be sharrows coming into the city.
Are we committing to the sharrows with this or just?
This is way too early in the game for any commitment. This is just saying that we would like we support the grant submission and the project as a whole. So this is just a pipe dream at this point. There's no engineering or anything with detail like that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a timeline on that grant program, when things are going to be released? I'm
not sure when it would be released. I know that it needs to be, the application needs to go in by, I think it's July 16th. So I know that there are a couple of connections that they are including in this grant that are part of the Greene County Master Trails program. The only other one that I know of off of the top of my head is the Yellow Springs Clifton Connector Trail. And that is going along 343 in between Yellow Springs and Clifton. So I know that that's another one of the projects that are a part of this. There might be other connections that were part of the plan. I'm not 100% sure. The Yellow Springs Clifton Connector Trail is the only one that I know of.
Okay.
And then one other question, Melissa, and if you don't know, it's fine. The language kind of threw me. The first bullet says using all transportation modes. Can you elaborate on that? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so all of the paths that are constructed, people in wheelchairs, people on scooters, people on bicycles, it's meant to accommodate all modes of transportation that aren't motorized.
That are not motorized.
Yes, you can't take motorized vehicles on any of the Greene County trails that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion on resolution 2021-6 or S? Seeing none, we have a motion, please.
So moved.
Okay, I so move that 2021-S be voted.
Thank you. In a second. Dr.
I'll
Dave,
second.
thank you.
A motion was made by Mrs. Middlestetter to adopt Resolution 2021-S, a resolution in support of the Bellbrook to Spring Valley Connector Trail. This was seconded by Dr. Van Veldhuizen. Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
yes,
Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Mayor Schweller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. We have no old business tonight. We have no new business unless anyone has any. Otherwise, we move to the city manager report.
Okay, so this is just a heads up really on two things that council will be seeing in one of the coming meetings. The dispatch contract renewal with the city of Xenia is we've almost been a year out of contract with that. And there had been a lot of back and forth over the split. So this is the end of the first contract after dispatch was abolished through the city, and we started contracting out with the city of Xenia. So last summer, the city manager for Xenia, Brent Merriman, had given me some statistics on the call volume and demand on dispatch for Bellbrook versus Sugar Creek Township. And there was a pretty significant disparity with that. So Sugar Creek Township was using the dispatch center much more than what Bellbrook was. And I received breakdowns of how many calls for our fire and police versus Sugar Creek Township fire and police. And so I had really advocated that the split be reconsidered. And of course, that would result in a savings for us and then an increase for Sugar Creek Township. And so there was a lot of back and forth about that. And one thing led to another. And here we are almost a year later without a contract because there was really no movement with that. So last week I received the statistical information and a proposal to basically decrease the city of Bellbrook's share by 13% and to increase Sugar Creek Township's share by 13%. And then every year thereafter, we would both see an increase of 3%. So I will share those full details with council once we get to the point where a contract is actually formed. I don't know if they're just going to plug and play with the figures in the contract that was used previously, but since that was the first contract after the consolidation of the services, I'm sure that there are going to be some terms that are going to need to be changed and removed since the circumstances are a little bit different. So they want this to pass, and they want us to approve this before my departure. However, I said, I think that this is fair based on the statistics that they've shared, and I had inquired whether or not Sugar Creek was supportive, and I have not gotten a response. So they want us to move on this, but I also don't have a contract yet. And I haven't heard any feedback in the last week as to whether Sugar Creek Township is supportive of this or if there could be continued negotiation. So I'm still waiting for this to move, but the proposal as it stands right now is we would see a 13% decrease in our rates. So I'm going to try to pull that up so I can give you guys that exact figure. But in the meantime, I'm going to move on for just a second. Unless it pops right up. Nope, here it is. Okay. So what that would look like for us is I wanted to pay and continue to pay even though we were out of contract. I did not feel right about not paying since we were out of contract, since we were receiving the services, and I didn't want to only pay 2 payments in 2020 and then have to catch up and pay 6 payments in 2021 because it just totally skews the budget. So what the proposal is our annual fees for 2020 to 2021 would realize that 13% decrease, which we've already been paying what we were. So we would be ahead here. That would be $232,000 annually. And just to let you know what that would look like for Sugar Creek, their share would be $303,000. So that would be the proposal that is on the table moving forward. I think that we were, let's see, what we were paying each quarter was $67,000. Currently, that was this year's allotment, so that equates out to $268,000 for 2020, 2021. And that would be going, like I said, down to $232,000. So I think that this is a good deal. Like I said, I've yet to know if Sugar Creek is going to support this or if they are going to want to further negotiate. However, once I have more information, then I'll absolutely bring you all the backup data on the calls for service and the 2-page statistics that they sent over to me last week. So I will certainly share that and keep you guys updated. Does anybody
Melissa,
have,
how long was the last contract for?
pardon me?
How long was the last contract?
I think
5 years?
I think it was 6 years on the last contract.
Okay.
I don't
My
have,
only concern is going forward, I'd like to see us come up with an approach as to how we're going to evaluate changes. I don't mind a 5 or 6 year contract with inflationary increases incorporated therein. But at the end of the 5 or 6 year period, I'd like to have something in writing as to how we're going to do our new calculation going forward. In the next 5 to 6 years, I think the township growth could be incredibly more significant than the city. And 13% in my book barely cuts it now. I think it's still a little bit high. We need a little bit bigger cut than that, but I understand, but I'd like to at least get something in place such that if their population increases substantially and the calls increase with that proportionally, that we don't have to go back to the drawing board and stall out for 6 months to get a new contract.
so once I have a draft of the contract, or even before then, I could ask that there be included a provision for recalculation at the end, because it's really been difficult this time, because once the figures were shared with me, I knew that we were definitely overpaying. And, you know, I understand the township's situation in that, you know, the agreement when it was formed was 50-50. And now that we know the demand on that call center and the dispatch center is disproportionate, then we really should have something in place. So I will mention that to Brent and see if we can get a provision folded into the new contract.
Okay, thanks.
If I ask sooner rather than later, I've got a better shot of it getting in versus waiting for the first draft and then being held up.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Most of the population growth is definitely in the township.
Melissa, was the difference in services the 13% also?
It was not a straight up 13%. I will share the information with council. It was a little hard to follow. They were basically weighting it. They have some calculation which says that the total charge is 75% readiness for service and 25% service utilization. I have no idea how they arrived at the 13%. There's nothing that tracks that equates to a 13%. They also break out the calls by type and then weighted type. But just to give you understanding of this, the 3-year average for calls is 5,000 Bellbrook and 15,000 Sugar Creek. So we're more like 30% of the demand versus.
Is there any reason why they want this done before you leave?
Because we're a year out of contract, and I'm sure that he's probably being pressured to get a contract firmed up. But I started asking questions long ago, so
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see an explanation that really helps me understand why it's 13% discount and not 70% discount. The other one is other options. I understand we could go with Greene County instead of Xenia. And at least some folks say that's a lot less expensive. Have we explored that?
This has not been explored in as long as I've been here, so I don't know if any other council members I was not here when dispatch consolidated, so I'm not sure if anybody else knows if Greene County was looked at that point.
At the time that we did the consolidation, Greene County came and spoke to us about a potential plan they may put forward. That plan never materialized during that time frame.
As I understand it, it could be dramatically cheaper, like less than half from per call cost versus what we're getting charged by Xenia. So I definitely think it's worth exploring before we.
Well, have them send some information to us when we have to look into it. I mean, listen, we can follow up with Greene County. I didn't know they had a program that they were going to be interested in us participating. I thought they only wanted to sell water to us.
Yeah, there wasn't anything to go with Greene County. My guess is that part of that cost is just the fact that they're there and ready to respond, whether we use, whether the calls come in or not, they still have to pay the equipment and, all the cost of being there. So I'm guessing that that's part of that cost.
That's the calculation they have. Like I said, the math is a little hard to track, but it says that we're basically being charged 75% readiness for service, 25% for calls, because like Elaine said, we have to pay for somebody to sit in that seat, whether the phone rings or not.
Right.
And for the equipment.
Yes.
We might get a little bit more leverage if we shop around too, is what I was thinking. I think it's worth reaching out. I've talked to a couple organizations that use the Greene County service, and their numbers were closer to our numbers, and their cost was like, I believe, on the order of $50,000 a year instead of $260,000 a year.
One of the big things is response time. It's a huge concern when we did this consolidation, and there was almost negligible difference when we went with Xenia. So we'd want to be sure that anything we look at is comparable.
Absolutely, but $200,000 in savings is definitely something to consider too.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard anything at all from Greene County in a number of years. I mean, Commissioner Kugler came and talked to us about a plan they were going to possibly put together, and that was the end of it. We had no other plan, no other options at the time we had to make the conversion. And at that time we made the conversion, we had several public meetings. We had some very packed council meetings with a lot of concern as to how this is going to roll out. And fortunately, knock on wood, this has been a great program as far as the service to our citizens. If we can get same service for a cheaper price, that certainly merits some evaluation.
Yeah,
The only entity that's reached out to me since I've been here is Centerville.
Are they on the Marks system?
Pardon me?
Are they the same radio system we're on? I didn't think they're on Marks.
I'm not 100% sure, but I know that, it's been probably 2 years, but I remember Wayne Davis reached out offering to take us in. So that's the only other entity that's ever even approached us.
I thought the entire state was on the same system after 20.
I don't know.
One of the big concerns, because everybody was on different systems and they couldn't talk to each other. So I thought we were all on the same system.
Not 100% sure on that. I'll definitely follow up on that one.
Yeah, if you could reach out to Greene County and Centerville and just see what they have to offer, I think we should shop it around at least.
Elaine brought up a good point. Township and Beaver Creek and Bellbrook are all, they can hear each other on the radios, and that's been a great improvement for
Absolutely.
heads up and, being able to work together as we now depend on all that stuff. So that's something to look at.
The one thing that makes me nervous though is we're kind of on borrowed time with this because we are out of contract. So I don't know if we tell Xenia we want extra time, we want to shop around and we want to kick it down the road. I don't know what that could mean for our services because they provide the service, and I have not looked at the contract in terms of any kind of a termination or anything clause being in there. But with being a year out of contract, I don't know how much time we could necessarily get with that if we could just do year to year right now. But being out of contract makes me uncomfortable because I'm not sure what that could mean if we tell them that we want to shop around.
We don't have to tell them we're shopping around, but right now we don't even have something to consider. We don't have a quote from them, do we?
A quote from who?
From Xenia.
13% what we were paying. Yeah, you have a price.
It's a 13% reduction from what we were paying.
I thought you said we didn't have the proposal yet. That was just what was floated by you.
No, I do not have a contract.
Right. So just drag your feet until they actually get a contract. Typically it'd be a 30-day. Again, it's good for 30 days, right? Before
Well,
you
I mean, trying to get, that's a pretty massive request to say, we want to switch our entire dispatch system. We need a price. It's going to be a lot more than just,
Yeah, that's
reaching
not,
out, making a phone call and getting a figure.
Well, so my memory may not be correct, but I thought there was a termination fee in that contract.
I need to look at it.
Just
I
check
was
it and
not-
see once. If there is, we got to evaluate that. But otherwise, if Central's got a fee or something like that, we can, kind of deal with that as it comes to us. If Greene County's got a better fee than Greene Central, we can certainly deal with that. I thought that Greene County was delinquent in fees to Greene Central.
I
you're-
thought too that they were all connected.
So, yeah, you're right about that.
I thought that was part of the problem with this whole fee thing, is that they were in search of payments or something. I don't know where that come from. I've not followed it, but maybe for our next meeting, give us an update on where it stands and what's going on with Greene County and the Greene Central. And if we have to get involved, if I have to get involved, those people, let me know. I'll be happy to talk with them.
Okay. All right, moving on. We received a letter from the owners of the golf park that lease the portion of the back portion of the well field for their use for their patrons to basically hit golf balls onto. So it's a lease that does not involve any kind of rent that we collect. It's just basically they have use of the well field to be able to hit golf balls onto, and there are provisions in there where they're not allowed to put chemicals down and some other things. But the thing that I realized was I got this letter in the mail saying that they wanted to exercise their option for an additional 5-year lease. And so I looked up the original contract, and that was executed in 2006. So it was a 5-year contract, and then they had the option for a certain number of 5-year terms where they just needed to notify us in writing of their wish to extend by 5 years, but it was not to go past 2026. So when I found the file and I found the contract, I saw where 5 years ago, they had sent Mark a letter saying that they wished to exercise an additional 5 years. Well, when I started to dig into it, I found the original lease, which, stated what was happening here, but the lease was never brought to council, and Dave Hamilton was not authorized to sign a lease under the direction of council or by the direction of council. So that's an issue. So I looked through every single piece of legislation in 2006. There was no resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease for the golf park with the entity that is leasing it. So I had let the operator of the golf park know that basically that lease was never legally ratified. And so we are going to redo a lease so that moving forward, it is legal. So I found the old lease was drafted by an attorney that's name I didn't recognize. I don't know if that was on behalf of the city or if it was on behalf of the golf park. But regardless, I sent it over to our municipal attorney and our insurance, and they made some suggestions for changes. And that will be, I'm gonna share it obviously with the golf park owner, make sure that they're good with the changes, and then that will be brought to council. So that'll be brought at a future meeting. So any questions on that?
Melissa, my recall was that lease was somehow accompanied with a substantial upfront payment. At one time, I was kind of thinking that, of course, it's been a number of years ago. I thought we purchased some of that from them.
So in 2006, that did happen. But the lease should have been a separate.
We purchased land from them in 06?
Yes, in 2006, the land was purchased for the use of the well field. Yes.
Okay, and this is a different parcel that we're leasing? Or they're
So-
leasing from us, or I didn't think there was any money going back and forth after the initial.
They are leasing from us what we purchased.
And is there a lease payment for it, or,
No,
okay, right, gotcha.
no, there is no lease payment for it, but there was no, it really, even if it was part of some sort of a purchase agreement or something, it really should have been executed separately and independently. So I just want to make sure that this is clean. So this new lease would clean this up and it would be fully legalized, in my opinion. So it would terminate in 2026 anyways. So it's not like this is really premature, because it's not, it hasn't been looked at since 2006. So one way or the other, I think it's smart, and the operators of the golf park were supportive of it too.
So if I'm understanding correctly, we bought the property because we wanted it for the well field.
Right.
Correct.
The well field. So we're just leasing it back to them to hit golf balls onto, which is
Correct.
not a big deal. I mean, they're not going to hurt it by doing that.
No, but we do have stipulations in place where they're not allowed to go out there and put fertilizers or pesticides or anything like that
yeah.
on it. So, and actually some of that language needed to be tightened up. The way that it was written, it doesn't strictly prohibit it. It's a little looser language. So that really needs to be tightened up to make sure that they absolutely do not do any of those things.
Yeah.
Which it's not been an issue in the past, but
Right.
it also has a provision in there that they're allowed to sublet it without our express consent.
Ooh.
So it does have some language that needs to be firmed up no matter what. So even if that agreement was, buried in some sort of a purchase agreement, I still think that it needs to be relooked at and changed a little bit.
Yeah, a purchase agreement and a lease back are two separate documents,
Yes.
two separate agreements. So good catch.
Okay, so as was touched on earlier, the American Rescue Plan funds, on the 22nd, it came out that townships would now be included. We were supposed to be allocated 1.4 million, and it went down to a maximum of $769,291. That has not fully been passed. So maybe it could change again. I'm trying to be hopeful with that. So it is a huge hit, because that 1.4 million had been something that had been floated out there for quite some time, and now it's being clawed back to pretty much half. So it's something that we just need to continue to follow. I mean, it's just like the CARES Act. They're going to change it. I mean, hopefully the allocation, we'll see what happens with the allocation, but I mean, the guidelines keep changing every week too. So this is something that you've got 4 years to be able to spend or commit. Since you're allowed to do infrastructure projects and things like that, as long as you have the money committed in 4 years, you have up to 6 years to spend it fully and close it out. So there's lots of time with this. So this is not anything urgent. And my best recommendation is just to sit and wait until it's fully fleshed out. So council goals update, I was gonna meet with each individual committee, but after I started looking at the goals, I don't really think that there's a full need to meet. What I might do is prepare each council committee with an update and then leave it up to the council committees to see if they would like to meet individually before we meet as a full council collectively to talk about them. I feel like some of the committees, some of the committee goals are further along than others. Service committee, we've got the Little Sugar Creek Road borings. There's gonna be a presentation at the end of July on that. We've got the streetscape project, which is in full swing. So, but then we've got finance committee with the CIC and the fire station consolidation, which really hasn't had any movement on either of those necessarily. So if council is okay with that as a whole, I can provide a written update by the first of the month to each of the council committees, and then they can decide individually if they would like to meet before we meet and have that full update with council as a whole. I just don't want to waste anybody's time, especially since we have to meet in person.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I would just add that, throw the tornado sirens in there.
Well, I mean, they're in there. I was just giving an
Okay,
example.
yeah,
There's
I
one
just-
council committee that definitely has more projects that are pushing forward just because of the projects, and then we've got others that haven't been pushed forward as far, so.
copy that. Okay.
As everybody knows, Juneteenth was made a federal and then subsequently a state holiday, so that's gonna be something that council is gonna have to figure out whether or not they want to observe as a city holiday in the future. So that would be a modification to the personnel policy manual if that was chosen to happen. I have updated the personnel policy manual by incorporating in the public records policy. When we were audited, the public records policy was not in the personnel policy manual, so they made the recommendation that that get included. I've already made the update, but I was not going to present the personnel policy manual to council. I was gonna let the next city manager do that because they might see changes that they want to see made in that policy manual, and it just wouldn't make sense for me to bring one thing and then maybe they take a look at it and they have other suggestions or recommendations. But Juneteenth will be something that if council chose to observe it along with federal and state, then that would be a change to the personnel policy manual. So I just wanted to put it on your radar since that just happened and it's top of mind. And then as the mayor mentioned, Article 14 has been kind of put on pause for now, and we will provide updates on that as appropriate. So that's all from me. I think that's enough.
Melissa, does council want to talk about this Juneteenth as far as becoming a city holiday?
I mean, it would be a change to the personnel policy manual. So, I mean, it's a federal holiday and a state holiday. So,
I think we follow federal and state on everything else, so I would think we probably want to go in that direction, make it a city holiday. Any discussion? Anybody think otherwise, or?
I mean, I agree with you. I think just we should probably have some estimate of what it costs. You know, some citizens might say, okay, what is the impact of that? And, you know, take all our FTEs and figure out just what it costs the city.
How many federal holidays are going to be pushed down our throat? You know,
I think we're at 11 right now, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so.
something like, so that's one a month
Yeah.
on top of everything else.
I'm not sure we have much of a choice, really. I mean, pretty much, it sounds like we ought to just go ahead and do a resolution and, like TJ said, maybe at least make a public statement of what some sort of cost is associated with this, so the public can understand.
Yeah, the only impact is going to be our, police and fire, and I guess we have to go back and look at those contracts and see what they provide as far as what we pay.
yeah, because that would be holiday pay for them. So that's where the cost would really come from, would be those bargaining unit members. But just for clarification, it would be an ordinance for the personnel policy manual.
But it would be everybody that works for the city, not just, it would just impact the contracts. for
Right.
The union contracts, but it would be a cost for the entire staff of the city, whether they're union or not, right?
Yeah, so we would, I mean, we
Well-
would have everybody's base pay for the regular employees, but then it would be double time for those people that are working as well. So, I mean, it's just something that just needs to be, folded in.
Yeah, it's more than just a regular pay. It's the upcharge for the holiday.
Yes.
Well, the salaried people, it wouldn't be an out-of-pocket cash payment. It would be a reduction of productivity.
Right.
They would lose a day of work, so presumably they would have to, as we all know, work harder to take a day off.
Yeah.
That's not the way it
Or
works.
work on
together.
the day.
Pardon me, Artie?
I think it was,
I don't think that's the way it works in the government.
Yeah, well, it does in small city government.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't bring anybody else to replace our admin people or anything. It would just be the police and fire that would have. And if service made a call that day, they would probably get overtime pay, I guess, or holiday pay. I don't know how we work those guys. So, okay. I'm fine with doing it, Melissa, if we want to just kind of set it up or prepare it ahead of time to put it with the personnel policy or where you want to go with it. But I think it's one of those things, like Ernie said, we probably should, follow state and federal and move forward.
Forrest, were you going to say something?
I was going to say that was probably one of the few times you see the United States Senate all agree on one thing. And that was this holiday. Same thing. Congress is real close. And I think it's a great holiday. I think we need to do it.
So that was it for me.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments with regard to the city manager report? Moving on, committee reports, service.
Here we go. Thank you, Mayor. June 18th and 19th, we had flash floods, a lot of rain, tornadoes in the area. We suffered some damage. A lot of things took place in the flash floods. South Main Street had a flood. Lower Hillside area was flooded, blocking people from their driveways. The vineyards in Little Sugar Creek, that road flooded. The bridge took some damage at the vineyards. Bellbrook Park, the post office area took a hit, flooding. Some homes nearby took on some flooding. And then Dots Market took a pretty severe hit with some of the businesses got water inside. Parking lot was covered with muck, and the reason I bring this stuff up is some of this stuff has been happening more frequent than it has, and moving forward, and especially if we get grant monies more available, infrastructure package gets passed, I think we need to take a real serious look at some of these issues. Like the Dots Market has been a mainstay. They have, we just came through a pandemic and they supported us as good as anybody could. They took care of opening for older folks to get their groceries, and they seem to have a good supply of everything. And I think we need to take a hard look at some of this stuff and see what we can get done to help them out. So that's basically all I got. Thanks.
I talked to Steve Lutz today. Their electronic sign took a direct lightning hit, so it's trashed, cannot be repaired because that model is no longer built, so they don't have parts. $35,000 to put the two new panels, one on each side. Their insurance will cover how much, I don't know, but the insurance will cover it. But I guess they had two eyewitnesses that said, sparks just flew everywhere, but it was a direct hit on that sign. So.
And Elaine, whose sign was that, please?
The electronic sign out in front of Dots that gives you all the specials.
And to Forrest's point, we've had some communications with Rob with regard to water. I think Melissa sent him a lot of information about it, and It looks like it relates to the Ridgewood development detention or retention pond. And it looks like that overflow is what's really impacting him, such that it probably isn't a city matter at this point in time. But we have to go back and find out who owns what. And we've looked at several documents, and Rob has looked at several documents. And I think right now, and Melissa, correct if I'm wrong, but I think he wants some additional time to kind of absorb all the stuff that we sent him.
What is Ridgewood? That's a name. Don't recognize that name. Ridgewood Development?
Yeah, it's Ridgeway Road, Big Tree Road. That's essentially the detention pond, which is sort of elevation higher than Dots, and that's what kind of flows down if it would come from that area.
Big Tree Road, you said?
Yes,
Okay, the Ridgewood doesn't register, but Big Tree does.
yeah, it's that whole area coming down. And we've got that short drive, which was a private drive at one point in time, and that's where the pond sits. And I have not looked at the pond. I don't know what's happening. I think we've paid a lot of attention to it. I think the pond was made according to rainwater standards at that point in time, which obviously we have 7 or 8 inches of rainfall coming through. That's gonna change everything.
Yeah.
But we're in the process right now of communicating with Rob, and I think we've given a lot of information, and he's asked for some additional time to look into it.
Okay, good.
Anything else, Forrest?
That's it. And you know, it's just something that we see more often, more rain and
Yeah.
more frequent. That's the way the world we live in now.
Weather patterns change.
Okay, thank you. Safety.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment that kind of parallels with Forrest. On that night, the entrance to my neighborhood was flooded. So I witnessed firsthand an orchestration between police as well as our service department. And I wanted to extend my gratitude. We had about 4 feet of water standing at the only entrance to our neighborhood. 1 car was stranded. And we had several trees, I would say weighing several hundreds of pounds, collide with the bridge. There was some damage, but it looks like it was not structurally significant. It looks like it has been repaired, at least to a state that all lanes are open on Little Sugar Creek right now. So I wanted to commend the service department, but as well as the police that kept things safe and calm that evening. It was really interesting on how quickly that water rose, shut off the neighborhood, and we just happened to be coming home from dinner at the right time. And I wanted to remind residents, if you see standing water, even if you're in an SUV, once you intake fluid into your engine, it is going to stop. So proceed with caution. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like
TJ.
to just add into that, just from a planning and zoning standpoint, that's a really good example of why those one way in, one way out developments are a bad idea, because all it takes is something like that and those people are cut off. It's just another example of why that's not a great decision.
Yeah.
I resorted to giving my son a piggyback ride through 4 feet of water just to get him up into the house. And then I went back to see if there's anything I could do to, there were some other things going on, but yeah, it was an interesting evening.
People need to understand too that it only takes a couple of inches of water to float your tires and you can just be washed away. They think they can drive through it, and it's critically dangerous to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, TJ. Finance and audit. I know Nick's not here. Does anyone on the finance or audit committee have anything to present?
Yes,
Share with us.
Mayor. So if I may,
Sure.
it looks like I believe Ernie and I have been emailing Melissa. The recent audit of the city was a clean audit and no exit interview was necessary. But if I read Ernie's email tonight, both he and I felt that with turnover on the finance committee likely expected in the future, we'd like to have an exit interview and just make sure the current members of the finance committee kind of soak up some knowledge before expertise may walk out the door.
Very good. Can you set that up then, Melissa, or has it been set up?
I'm working on getting a date.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Community affairs.
The only thing I have right now is we still are working on scheduling interviews for the 2 board positions, one on Old Village Review Board and one for BZA. Some complications on scheduling came up, but it's still on the docket to take care of. We have applicants, we just need to get this interview scheduled.
Okay. Thank you, Elaine. Moving on, clerk update.
I have too many windows open. Okay.
Thanks.
So I wanted to make sure council was aware that I will be attending the annual Ohio Municipal Clerks Association Annual Institute. It's where I learn all kinds of stuff, and it's part of the process for becoming a certified municipal clerk. And that is July 11th through the 15th, which means I am not in town for the council meeting on the 12th. So the mayor's aware, and Melissa's aware that I'm going to be gone. And so just to let you know, as of right now, there aren't any agenda items that we have in the works for July the 12th. So, you know, council can decide what they want to do with that evening. But someone else will have to take the minutes if you're going to meet. So you can either cancel the meeting or do interviews or whatever else works for you, but I will be out. July 26th, which will be the second meeting in July, we'll begin with work session at 6 p.m. with the engineer to talk about the Little Sugar Creek Road boring report and what they found from that and their recommendations, that kind of stuff. So that will be coming up on the 26th. Also, starting with after this meeting, actually, starting July 1st, everyone is back to in-person meetings per the state. So we will all have to, you know, put on shoes and go to the office.
Sit up straight.
That's all I have.
Mayor, if I could, so
Go
you
ahead.
triggered something when you mentioned Greene County and payment for dispatch services. Green Central is ran by the city of Xenia. City of Xenia is Green Central. So Greene County doesn't have their own dispatch. So that clicked in me, and I just looked it up, and that's why that is the case, is because I remember the city manager of Xenia making a comment that Greene County did not want to have to pay their annual allotment, so they weren't paying, and that was an issue. So I think that might have also had something to do with trying to figure out how much money Bellbrook and Sugar Creek should be paying moving forward, because Greene County was pushing back as well. So that clicked. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks for that clarification, because I did recall that. I thought that Greene County was paying nothing to Green Central, and I knew there was a dispute going on, but I didn't know what the latest and greatest was on that.
Yeah, because that was a while ago that was all brought up. So it didn't dawn on me until you mentioned that, and I looked it up, and that's the case.
Yeah.
Mayor, I'd like
Thanks,
to
Melissa.
go ahead and move that we cancel the first July meeting on city council and not worry about it, especially since there's no agenda items and we won't have a clerk.
I second that. We've typically only met once a month in the summer anyway, so a good reason to follow that procedure.
All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And also keep in mind, council, we'll probably be trying to schedule interviews for the city manager at some point in that time frame.
Yep.
And obviously, if any significant information or that we need to have a meeting comes up, we can certainly meet and have someone else do the minutes, although they won't be as stellar as Pam's. Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Ernie. Open discussion of council. Forrest, do you have anything for us this evening?
I don't have anything, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Ernie,
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
thank you. TJ,
Yeah, I just got a couple things. I realized when I said something on the service report, I wanted to make clear. Yes, some trees had come in contact with the bridge. They were not present prior to the storm. They were washed down in a biblical fashion from God knows where. I had never seen them before, so I didn't want to say that there was any dereliction to do. That was absolutely not the case. Everything was clear, and these were massive trees. So and I had some pictures of them, but that's for another day. Any rate, I did want to mention on July 17th from 2 to 5 p.m. at the high school football stadium, there's a football community pep rally. It's $10 per person, but it's catered by Little Miami River. So if you wanted to support the football program, this is at the high school, middle school, as well as the Wee Eagles. I know for one that community is really anxious to do things in person, in mass, and support the activity that so many people enjoy. So I wanted to let you guys know that. If you guys need any details, Melissa, if you wanted to post anything on it in the newsletter or whatever, anything prior to July 17th, let me know. I can forward you the flyer. Does anybody know, I'm sorry if I missed a comment, but the BZA PRC, is there going to be one scheduled, even though that we're without the position?
Yeah, they're only, BZA PRC is only missing one person. So as long as you have a quorum of the members, you still have a meeting. But there was not a July meeting. Or June meeting, excuse me. There will definitely be a July meeting. There's already a couple of variance cases to be heard, so.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. And then the only last thing I wanted to do, and this is just for educational, I happened to catch something on Netflix. If you haven't seen the documentary American Factory, it is about the opening of the Fuyao plant. I know the city manager of Moraine, and so this was something that, affected people in our community. If you want to see the complexity of what it was involved there, it is really eye-opening. I strongly recommend it. So I just want to say kudos to all those involved in that Moraine project.
What's the name again?
It's American Factory. It was really interesting. So
On Netflix.
on Netflix. Yeah, it was made by the film couple from Yellow Springs, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. And I believe they won an Academy Award for that.
They probably did. They won several.
And they had done the one prior to that called, I think it was The Last Truck, where they talked about the closing of that plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, strongly recommend American Factory.
They do awesome work.
Yeah, if you want to see the complexity of things that we could have to contend with, it's eye-opening. All right, thanks.
thanks, TJ. Elaine,
The only thing I have is responding to TJ's talk about the trees. Bellbrook Park took a hit. I happened to notice on Sunday when I went down to the museum, a big root pile up near the street. One of the big trees blew over in our park. So I'm sure that was a casualty of the storm. But it's being taken care of, but just one more casualty. Nothing else on community affairs, though.
Okay, thanks. Dr. Dave.
I think the only thing tonight, Mayor, is to ask Melissa to pass on to the service department after that storm. You know, everybody talking here, the trees they saw. I ran into Pam, and quite a few logs had made it into her front lawn. A lot of damage and water down the hill from us. And it just was amazing how quickly all that was, you know, contained until it drained away and then cleaned up. And it's just, I think, become the level of service to which we've become accustomed to, and it is appreciated.
Thanks, Dr. Dave. Melissa, please pass on our thanks to the service department. They did do a good job. And I was just curious that I know when the North Bellevue Bridge went out, they likened that rain to the 100-year storm. Have we heard anything with regards to the storms that came through on the 18th and 19th? Because I mean, we had 8 or 9 inches, and I've gotten pictures from a number of citizens showing me water in Lower Hillside and people standing with water up to their knees. And I didn't know if we could come back with any response as far as, not that it's an excuse, but I mean, I said it's significantly more water than we typically get. Has anybody made any observations as to that type of a storm or anything?
No, I had not heard where the rise level went. That North Bellevue one, I think it was in the 200-year flood mark. If I remember correctly, it was over the 100-year flood mark for sure. So if it wasn't 150, or it was either 200 or 150, I can't remember, but it far exceeded the 100-year flood mark. But I had not heard any data on where the rise was with that particular storm, but I can try to see if I can pinpoint that. I know Dayton Daily News had reported on those storms from last year, and they had some information there. And our engineer, I think, was the one that pointed out where the rise was with that particular storm that took out North Bellevue. But I'll look into it.
I think it'd be worthwhile to check on that, because I know I've gotten a few complaints from people about the water, and not that it's an excuse, but we can certainly say it's one of these things that we don't necessarily factor into all of our calculations.
It's what happens when you're the lowest point in the county. Water flows downhill.
We know that well.
What's interesting though is it didn't really come from the river. When I came out Streamview the next morning, I could turn left and go right down Washington Mill. Washington Mill was not blocked. It didn't wash over Washington Mill.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's
it was
unheard
that's the
of.
first time in 20 years that I've seen water in Lower Hillside, and the Washington Mill Bridge or road wasn't overflowing. So it had to come from a different spot, some heavy rain in a specific spot, maybe in Bellbrook. I don't know. I think the service department did a great job by all means, but it was certainly a curveball to see that it didn't come from the river.
Yeah, because Washington Mills always floods.
Not this time, which was just weird. I couldn't believe I could turn left and go that way that next morning.
Interesting. Thanks. Did not know that. Have anything for a viewing audience tonight? I know we got a couple people out there. If you're out there, you want to speak, please raise your hand.
I don't see either of them raising their hands. So,
Okay. Given no further discussion, this will conclude our regular meeting, and now we'd like to go into executive session to consider the employment of a public employee. Can I have a motion regarding going to executive session to consider the employment of a public employee?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. This time we'll go ahead and log off and then log back in under the executive session webinar ID and password. Thank you, and thanks to our viewing audience for watching.